This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. Thank you so much for the feedback on the last episode. That was the one where I spoke with Mark Griffiths about his company On The Ball Travel. The level of appreciation you guys have for anyone who runs a coach is really high, and I think now, thanks to what Mark explained, there is now that extra understanding to what is involved. If you've not heard it yet, as always, it is at your podcast provider of choice or threelionspodcast.com. So what's been going on since we last spoke? Well, Thursday the 2nd of February, the qualifying draw was made for the 2025 Under-21 European Championships. These are to be held in Slovakia in 2 years' time. Hopefully England will be there, and to do so, they'll have to get past Ukraine, Serbia, Northern Ireland, Azerbaijan and Luxembourg. All of these in Group F. And as of the time of recording, the specific fixture dates or venues, well, they haven't been set just yet, but they're due to be played between March this year and November next. The 9 group winners go through along with the 3 best runners-up, and then there is a playoff for the 3 remaining spots to fill those final 16 positions. Now, the last time the under-21s played was actually in September last year, when we beat Germany 3-1 at Sheffield United's Bramall Lane. And if you want to go and see them, they are playing next month, March, during the international window. This is when the senior men will be playing Italy away and Ukraine at home. The under-21s, they've got 2 friendlies. One against France on Saturday the 25th of March, that's at Leicester. And then against Croatia on Tuesday the 28th of March, that's at Fulham. It's an ideal opportunity to cheer on the lads whilst checking out a Premier League ground at the same time. Doesn't often happen. If that's your thing, it's a decent price, £15 for adults. These friendlies are, of course, preparation for this summer's European Championships. Now, unlike the senior European Championships for men and women, the under-21s take place every 2 years, as opposed to every 4. So this year's is taking place in Romania and Georgia, starting 21st of June, where we are in Group C with the Czech Republic, Israel and current holders Germany. It's okay. As I said, we've already beaten the Germans recently. And plus the top 2 go through in the finals groups. I hope that's come across all okay. Sounds a bit complicated, having to qualify for 2025 before 2023 has even started. Now, I don't often go off-piste, as it were, but recently I was taken by an article I read on Twitter. It's about the Marshall Islands, and you may have heard about it too, but they are supposedly the only remaining country left on the planet without a national football team. So I delved a bit deeper, and I've ended up arranging a chat with technical director Lloyd Owers. And obviously the Marshall Islands, they're not English, but my tenuous link to England is Lloyd is English. So, Lloyd, welcome along.
Thank you very much. Cheers for the chance to speak.
No, you're welcome. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Whereabouts are you in the country?
I'm just north of Oxford, so not quite in the Marshall Islands time zone.
No. What is the time? So they've got to be
12
backwards.
hours ahead of us.
Oh, they're ahead. Of course they are.
Yeah, 12 hours ahead. So it's it's different trying to contact people there at the same time. It's just that it's crazy at times. Definitely give the opportunity to try to be creative anyway.
Yeah. Had you ever heard of the Marshall Islands before this?
Briefly, and it was only really because when I was a kid, I was a massive travel fan and random places, flags, all sorts.
Yeah.
And the only reason I heard of it was because I remember my cousin coming home from school talking about these Pacific islands he'd heard of, and that was how it was. And then after that, there was probably no real thought about the Marshall Islands for about 20 odd years. So, it's definitely a unique place as well. Yeah.
Well, you're a UEFA licensed coach of, I'm not quite sure what standard. So, God, just explain to us a bit about yourself and then sort of how this position came up.
Yeah, no problem. No, cheers. So, for myself, it's a random one. So my background is obviously predominantly football based. I'm from Essex originally, so grew up played at semi-pro level till early 20s, but I'd coached from about 16. So I worked as a community coach working in schools, community centres, holiday clubs, started developing into the development centres, United, and loved it, absolutely loved coaching. So I just kept pushing on with that. And then I had the opportunity to work for the FA as one of the skills coaches when I started rolling out the programme, which is work with 5 to 11-year-olds, but also help to mentor coaches and teachers around the country. So I applied for a role and didn't get the one I applied for, but I was offered the role in Oxfordshire. So I thought, why not? So I jumped at the chance, moved to Oxfordshire, and then from that point I just stopped playing because logistically it was difficult to do 2 places, 2 counties. I was working more in football anyway. So I just started to focus on coaching, and then it just took me into random little places, which was quite nice. So I had an opportunity to go to Canada, delivering coach education workshops through connections I've still got now. Yeah. USA doing the same thing. And then also had the opportunity to do similar work in Sweden as well, for a club in Sweden. So I was combining coach consultancy work, but with opposition analysis as well. And it was a good opportunity. So came back and then realised that I quite liked Oxfordshire in general, so I stayed. So I worked for Oxford United, and I've since been at Oxford City and now and Mansfield Town thrown in there as well as
all right.
And then now the Marshall Islands. But in terms of the role coming about, I think, like I said, my background's coaching and teaching. So I worked as a university lecturer and college lecturer for a few years as well, and coached on the side. And I realised that I quite liked the whole academic side of everything as well. So I started studying more, and I ended up doing a master's degree in coaching, which got me to the stage where I realised that I quite like writing and that whole process of the sport, but in general as well. So it left a bit of a void. So I started having to think, what do I do? Yeah. So it was either do a PhD or write a blog for me, or a book. And I thought, I'm not doing a PhD. So I ended up writing a blog site and creating a blog site. So I had weekly content.
Okay.
And from that point, that's where the Marshall Islands came about, because one chance interview with a couple of guys from Samoa really spiraled my own network and put me in contact with people all over the world. And one of the guys was the Marshall Islands Soccer Federation president, Shem Levi. Right. And the rest is history, I guess.
So how recent was that?
That was literally just before Christmas. So I connected with Shem in November. And then initially it was just because of the time difference. It was just a lot of WhatsApps, voice notes, emails, stuff like this, really. And then it was a case of he asked me to combine my own style and philosophy to their long-term aims. So it was a nice opportunity to put together what I thought they could do and how we could do it. And luckily him and the board approved. And the next thing, they offered me the role as a technical director. So, I mean, officially it was just before Christmas. Sorry, technically just before Christmas. But officially, really, we didn't really start till the new year. So, very, very recent, very, very fresh, really.
Amazing. So what is a technical director as it is?
So my role is basically, it's a lot of roles in one.
Right.
The main part is combining or creating first a playing style for everything in the nation. So realizing that it's limited in terms of space, accessibility, lots of little islands that are hard to connect, and most islands don't have facilities anyway. So it's combining like the culture and the accessibility of the country itself to my own ideas and their long-term vision. So I have to create a play and identity. So that includes everything from school curriculums and how we roll it out across schools, to youth pathways and like open access sessions, but as well as talent excellence pathways, right through to league structures and creating and formalising those league structures for predominantly men initially, because that's where it's currently played informally, but ultimately a female game as well. And then from the top down, the national team. Wow. So it's a lot of little strands to one wider goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. Well, I mean, I had a quick Wikipedia, as I'm sure many people have, as I'm sure you have as well. And you say about the National League structure, there's a domestic league over there. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very informal. So basically, It's played for like a month of a year. And it's almost like a small cup competition in theory, in essence, I guess. But yeah, there is an informal structure to it, and it's on the island of Kwajalein, which is basically a US military base. It's a very large military base which takes up the island. And through August, pretty much through to September, they play games, and we're trying to now formalise that, as well as on Majuro, which is the main capital island where the national stadium is going to be built or is being built. And so we'll have, in theory, it'll work with 2 regional leagues, and then ultimately like a playoff at the end of the season for the national champion. But yeah, so it's informal games. It's just now a case of, people play it. We've just got to formalise their whole approach, really.
Yeah. So do you I'm sort of maybe going back a few years here, where they'd send you some tapes or something, but I guess like they could see what the standard is like or something. I guess you could maybe view it online now, could you?
There's very limited media available for it, and there's also, it's not a footballing culture, so it's not really something that people are going to go out and watch and film. Unfortunately, there's small little clips about it on YouTube, but not a lot. So you're looking at really growing it from the ground up. Yeah. So it's a very US based culture. A lot of baseball, a lot of basketball, a lot of individual sports, but not really anything for football. So it really is a case of, because they've grown it in the States, it's now naturally grown in the Marshall Islands. Kids want to play it, people want to be involved in it, but not really sure how, I suppose. That's probably the way to look at it. So it's now going in and working with the people that do have a bit of an idea of the how, and helping them to develop it further.
Yeah. There must be, I don't know who the last nation prior to yourselves would have been to gain a national football team or to be part of a like UEFA or
the confederations.
The confederations.
Yeah.
Do you know who the last one was and sort of how long it would have?
I actually don't know the name of the last one it was, most recent. But I mean, the only sort of comparisons, other countries that are in the same region as us, Pacific, you've got like Tuvalu, Kiribati, islands that are OFC, so Oceania Football Confederation affiliate members, but not full members, and they're not FIFA members. But it's something that they are trying to gain recognition of. But there's a bit of it's very, and there's a lot of protocol to follow. Right, that's an easy way to put it.
Yeah.
And because they don't have like hotels, for example, on a training base for visiting teams, it's then the FIFA are then saying they can't be members. But ultimately, if they had FIFA funding, they could help to do that, so it would grow the country as well as the game. But the thing for like the Marshall Islands, for example, they have hotels, they have accommodation at resorts, so that infrastructure for the country is there. They've just, for us, it's just now a case of building the football aspect.
Okay.
Which hopefully puts us in a position with FIFA, but first of all, it'll be OFC. But yeah, in terms of the first country, most recent nation, I couldn't tell you the exact nation that's most recent, but yeah, in terms of like confederations, Tuvalu and Kiribati are fairly recent to the OFC.
I was only kind of asking that in sort of respect of how long you anticipate this to take.
Yeah.
Do you know, got a timescale?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would love to see it as a long-term project and be a part of it when we hit those milestones.
Yeah.
So if you can get OFC recognition membership, brilliant. If you can get FIFA membership, but realistically, it's probably going to take a long time. You know, it's talk. I've spoken to some people and who have done similar projects who some haven't been successful in their attempts, and they're still going. And you're talking 10 years. So it's difficult in that sense. And as much as I would like to see it long term, I'd also have my own aims that I would like to within 10 years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would love to be a part of it, and hopefully hopefully I'm in a position to get something from it. Yeah, if that's like OFC, for example, membership, then that would be fantastic in itself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because as a country, they do have a sporting history. I see that they've been part of the Olympics, and we hosted a few of the athletes of the London 2012.
Yeah.
So there's sporting pedigree there, as it were.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they've represented internationally at baseball, weightlifting, all these, swimming and stuff like this. So there is a national interest in sport. It's just that football hasn't really been one until very recently. And I think partly it comes down to that culture. It's something that they don't really have an access to where they do, but it's not really something that's viewed because there is no history with it, I guess.
Yeah.
There's also no local role model, so it's hard to look up to someone, I guess, in terms of football. So we're trying to change that. We want to make sure, and we've got people that want to play. So, for example, this morning I was contacted by an 18-year-old guy that plays in that Kwajalein League, and he's helping to run sessions for children.
Right.
Which is fantastic. But same again, people are playing it informally, but there's no real structure to it. So it's now, the big thing for us is just creating opportunities, really, and hopefully long term that'll then spiral on to those worldwide opportunities for people. If that's a case of being part of like World Cup qualifiers, for example, and having the Marshall Islands representing that, then fantastic.
Yeah, too right. I mean, you say that you've officially sort of taken on this role as technical director of beginning of this year, and we're talking the back end of January. I'm assuming you haven't been out there yet. What's the plan there?
So it's very recent. I haven't been out yet. The plan for me, it really does come down to financial in terms of how we work, when we can make it work. But also, there's no point going out just yet anyway, because there's a lot to sort out to make it worthwhile to go.
Okay.
So it's penciled in that I'll go in the summer. It's likely July. If there's an opportunity to go out sooner, like May, I will, but it looks like July. But there's a growing need for me to go out too, because we've got people that want to be coaches, that people are delivering those informal sessions. So it's a case of going out and doing coach education, workshops for those guys, but also things like networking and just seeing where everything's going to be based, and put in those like school structures, for example, being part of the PE team delivery, and being hands-on with the things that we're creating now and actually putting it into practice. That'll be fantastic when we get a chance to do it. But it is looking like July for myself. Yeah.
I mean, as a traveller myself, like seeing these places. By chance, I watched some sort of YouTube documentary not so long ago about a guy who took he was flying from somewhere in the States going to Malaysia, I think. And he ended up almost island hopping across, and a couple of the islands, it appears, were the Marshall Islands. And
it probably makes sense.
And
logistically, it's very difficult to get to. It's like 30 hours to get there from UK. You're talking about $2,500 to get there.
Right.
And so, it's expensive. But I think one of the ones where you've got to really carefully select your route as well. So the way in is via Hawaii. So it's connecting to the States, connecting to the mainland states, then Hawaii, then the Marshall Islands. The other option is you go to Brisbane in Australia, and then, like you said, it's island hopping. So it's an island hopping flight almost.
Yeah.
That goes, I think it's the 4th stop to the Marshall Islands. It's just crazy in terms of the logistics of it, but it'll be all part of the fun.
Absolutely. It's almost like when you get on the bus and you have to ding the bell, I'm getting off now.
Just a flying version.
That's right. There's a website which is marshallislandssf.com, and I see that there is this part of a GoFund page on there as well. Is that, I mean, I assume in ultimate it will benefit yourself as well, but benefit the country and the team as well. Is that right?
Yeah, the whole purpose of it is because obviously we're not part of OFC or FIFA. We don't access any funding. it all comes down. It's really, we are reliant on fundraising, sponsorship. In terms of like the GoFundMe page, it's all created to set out equipment, kit, getting things out there, and just getting the basics, because it is a case of you need balls, bibs, and cones to play football. So if you wanted to set up a program, you need all those basics that we take for granted. So it's a case of getting a donation fund for that, really, because without any membership funding, it is all down to that fundraising and sponsorship. So fortunately, I am joined on there by a guy called Justin Wally, who is the director of press and communications, and Matt Webb, who is director of marketing and fundraising and sponsorship. So between us, we're trying to target those different channels, and within 3 weeks, we've hit. Well, it's 2 weeks actually, because it started a week after we launched. So so within 2 weeks, the GoFundMe page is up to $1,000, which is about £810. So it's fantastic, really, in terms of like, we haven't got a fixed date that we have to get an X amount by X date. So for us, it's been fantastic that people have wanted to donate and just offer that. And we've had people that have wanted to donate equipment that they've got. So like youth clubs around the UK, for example, have got in touch and how can we help? Do you want bibs, balls, cones, pop-up goals? Stuff like this is fantastic. So all those little bits are a massive benefit to us.
You're going to be taking a hell of a lot of baggage then, aren't you, when you go?
I know. But the funny thing is, it's cheaper for me to do that with extra baggage allowance than it is to ship it out there. So,
right.
Win-win, I suppose.
Yeah. Just going back to like the aiming to be part of the Confederation, is that something that you'll be part of, or is that down to like their, I don't know, like their FA that is aiming to be?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of both, to be honest. So in terms of like the protocol for it, it will hold a lot more weight. And we know from just speaking informally to people at OFC, it will hold a lot more weight if it comes from the board, for example. So the direct messages will come from those guys, and they'll sort that out. Some of the people on the board are lawyers, for example, so they're all a massive bonus. They'll help a lot. We've actually been contacted by a guy who works with a FIFA nation. I won't name it just yet in case he doesn't come aboard, but who wants to help us with our applications, for example. So that's massive bonus. But then I'll be involved in terms of, because of the technical aspects, the technical elements, the content I've created for it. We can then approach them and say, well, this is what we've got. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. But can you help us develop it further? Because I think if we go to them and say, we haven't got anything, we just want to play, they're just going to laugh us out the door. So you need something in place to then back it up a little bit and show development in your own sense. But the thing is, we were talking about this recently. So because obviously OFC is the main route for us, 100% it is. Logistically, geographically, it makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of justifiable reasons for us to approach CONCACAF if it doesn't work out with OFC, because of the need to fly to the States first to get into the Marshall Islands. That logistically, if you're like a Caribbean island, that will be a route anyway. So countries may have to do that similar journey to get to us if that was the case. But also because of the connections with the US in terms of like governments and politics between the Marshall Islands and the US, there's a lot of connection there still. So that goes in our favour in terms of being justifiable to approach those guys as well. So never say never, but OFC is the main route.
Yeah, you've got that backup plan just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to ask you, have you learnt the national anthem?
I haven't, but it's the only, and it sounds really vague, but I can't find, for the life of me, I cannot find anything other than just like an instrumental version.
Oh, right.
So I've now actually got to the point in the last couple of days I've asked that, is that the formal version? So I'm waiting to hear back.
I wish you luck on that one. Oh, top stuff. And I mean, what as well I've heard about and seeing this whole project in the media, obviously where they are located, there is the weather and the climate issue. I mean, whilst it looks a beautiful place to see and visit, it is very susceptible to climate, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the climate change is a real thing for the Marshall Islands. By 2050, it's likely, it is going to be that the Marshall Islands won't look the way that it does now. A lot of the islands will be submerged because of climate change, rising sea levels. So that's a massive, obviously, huge impact on the nation itself.
Yeah.
So part of this is really to raise awareness for the nation, because you can create an awareness to the world about all those aspects as well, and people might want help in some way. So the good thing about it, people like Fiji, for example, are offering like land support and relocation packages and stuff like that. It's great. But at the same time, the sad aspect is, the Marshall Islands citizens on the islands that will be flooded and submerged, unfortunately lose their homes. It won't look the same. So it's not quite the same in that sense. But if we can raise an awareness of people to help in some way, that's a good step in the right direction at least. But things like the national stadium on the main island of Majuro, they won't be as affected. It will still be affected, but not in the same way, I guess, fortunately. So it's a real shame that is an actual thing that is a negative aspect of the whole thing, really. But hopefully all this does create an awareness to the country as well as just the sport.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with football, isn't it? Sometimes it can just raise awareness for a whole variety of things.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Lloyd, thanks for your time, just sort of introducing us to the Marshall Islands. Should anyone want to get in touch, you open to that?
Of course, yeah. I welcome anything like that. It's been massive for us in terms of like people getting in touch in any context. I'm 100% open to that.
So, I mean, you're on Twitter. Is that the best place to go for you?
Yeah, Twitter's probably the best place to contact me, just because I'm always on it. So, it's just an easy one. I always see a message come through. So personally, mine is just literally at Lloyd Owers, my name. But then in terms of the Marshall Islands is at SoccerFedMI. And Justin and Matt look after all the social medias channels. We're on Instagram as well, which is at RMI Soccer, so Republic of Marshall Islands, RMI Soccer. And then Facebook is just Marshall Islands Soccer Federation.
Excellent. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. I wish you all the best
thank you.
To yourself.
We'll keep you updated.
Yeah, by all means. Stay in touch and come by and let us know how you're getting on. Maybe come May or the summer when you've been out there and you've seen it with your own eyes.
Definitely. We'll check in via the Marshall Islands at the same time.
That'll be a first. Looking forward to that one. Lloyd, thank you very much for that.
Cheers for your time. Thank you.
My many thanks go to Lloyd there for his time. Really fascinated by the whole project, and it'd be great to hear from him later down the line. So, watch this space. As he mentioned, there is a GoFundMe page. Obviously, it's entirely up to you where you put your money. And I appreciate that there are many grassroots clubs here in England that would happily accept contributions. But to feel that you've helped just a little for the last remaining nation to try and get a national team isn't something that comes around often, is it? And we were speaking about the National League over there in the Marshall Islands. I've just been on Wikipedia. There are some interesting team names in that league. Purple People Eaters being my particular favourite. But I can imagine a derby between Cavalry 1 and Cavalry 2. And Slow Motion is an interesting name for a team. But the current champions, this all according to Wikipedia, are FC Swell. There you go. There's some team names from the Marshall Islands that you never knew until now. I know it wasn't all entirely England related, but I do hope you enjoyed it. Now, something else I'd just like to mention before we go. I'd just like to take you back to the summer of 2021. Were you in or around Wembley for the Euro 2020 men's final? I recently spoke to Freddie at Rogan Productions, who's working on a documentary film, and he'd like to hear from anyone who has lasting memories of the highs and lows of the day. If you do, please email footballdoc2020@roganproductions.co.uk. That's footballdoc2020@roganproductions.co.uk. I'm not at liberty to give any more information about the project out, but as I say, I've spoken with him. Sounds really interesting. I've given my memories to Freddie. So if you want any more info, please do drop him a note, especially if you feel you could contribute. And we'll just watch this space, see what happens. There we go. That'll do for this episode. Thank you very much for listening, as always. Coming next is the Arnold Clark Cup preview episode. The Lionesses will be looking to defend the trophy that they won a year ago, this time facing South Korea, Italy and Belgium. Once again, I hope to be chatting with Rich Laverty about Serena Weigmann's latest squad, which she announced on Tuesday just gone. Remember, she is yet to lose a game in charge of the Lionesses. I hope you can join me for it. Until then, take care of yourselves. Cheers.